Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tatiana DeGrosa, and I'm a co-director of the Start Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities in Schools project at SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Positive School Climate, the second webinar in our Inclusion What Parents Can Do series. Thank you for joining us. Next, I would like to tell you a little bit about SPAN. Since 1987, families in New Jersey and beyond the Garden State have made SPAN their first stop for support and resources. Today, SPAN's projects and programs for parents of children from birth to age 26 and for women of childbearing age have expanded from a kitchen table to over 20 national, regional, and local programs funded by government agencies, multiple foundations, and fee-for-service contracts. These programs cover education, health and mental health, parent leadership development, human services, child care, and child welfare. Our mission is to empower and support families and to inform and involve professionals interested in the healthy development and education of children and youth. And our foremost commitment is to children and families with the greatest need due to disability or special health, mental health needs, poverty, discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, language, immigrant or homeless status, involvement in the child welfare or juvenile justice systems, geographic locations, or other special circumstances. In order to achieve this important mission, SPAN's core programs help families, professionals, as well as policymakers know the rights of families and their children, access resources and information, secure appropriate services, navigate multiple systems that serve children and families, keep children healthy and in school, prepare for life after high school, connect with other parents who understand, be catalysts to improve services for children and families, start and run parent groups, including special education parent advisory groups, become effective partners in improving schools, and finally advocate for other children and families. Please visit our website for additional information. Debbie?
Thank you, Tatiana. The Start Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities project is a partnership between the New Jersey Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs and SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. The Start EPSD offers programs and services that support the engagement of families to improve outcomes for students, including developing and sustaining special education, parent advisory, and support groups in communities and school districts. Through workshops, regional meetings, and parent leadership development activities, we help parents and parent leaders to become informed and active participants in their child's education, to partner with educators in improving educational programs for students with disabilities, particularly in the area of inclusion, start and strengthen special education parent advisory groups, CPAGs, and/or parent support groups, increase effective family engagement to improve special education programs, policy, and practices in school districts and communities. So let's meet the START team. All of us serve as parent group specialists. In addition, myself, Debbie Esposito, and Tatiana DeGrosa are co-directing the project. I'm also the Literacy Project Coordinator. Monique DJ-Wilson is the New Jersey Tiered Systems of Support Project Coordinator, and Brenda Figueroa is the Inclusion Project Coordinator. To connect with our team, please visit our webpage on the SPAN website. Now that you've met our team, we'd like to know who's in the room. So please take a minute to take our brief poll. We have a couple of questions that will help us find out who's in the room. Our first polling question asks, are you attending this webinar as, and the options are parent or guardian, general education teacher, special education teacher, school district staff, or something else. Please select the appropriate response and click submit.
Okay, so a little more than half of you have given your response. I'll give it another few seconds and then we'll go ahead and share the poll with everyone. Okay, I'm closing the poll. It looks like 67% of you are parents or guardian and 33% other. All right, well, thank you so much for participating in the poll.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So for our second question, we'd like to know, how old are your children or the children that you teach? So if you're a parent, you can let us know how old your children are. For educators, please indicate the ages of the children you teach. The options are preschool, grades K to 2, grades 3 to 5, 6 to 8, or 9 and 12, 9 or grades 9 to 12 and above. For this question, we'd like you to please select all that apply and click submit.
Okay, well, while I'm waiting to close, everyone has participated in a poll, and I appreciate that. I'm going to close the poll. So the responses are 25% preschool children, 50% children grades K through 2, 25% grades 3rd through 5th, and it seems like everyone is working with children 6th to 8th grade, and then 75% grades 9th through 12th.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in the poll. So it looks like a little bit of everyone is represented here. Next, Brenda is going to give us an overview of what we can expect for our webinar today. Brenda?
Thank you, Debbie. So, and good afternoon, everyone. So today we will learn what school climate is and how school climate relates to inclusion, how a positive school climate can impact all student outcomes, and we will also share with you some of our resources and information on our upcoming workshop series. Next slide. So now we would like to hear from you. What comes to mind when you hear the words school climate? You can enter the responses on the question pane. Tatiana, anybody has responded?
Yes, we have a couple. A general theme is when people hear words school climate, what comes to mind is no bullying or bully-free zone.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I'm going to continue for the sake of time. So let's take an in-depth look at school climate. Monique?
Thank you, Brenda, and those were great answers. So what is school climate? School climate is a multidimensional concept relating to physical, academic, and social aspects of school life. Students, staff, and families experience school climate. School climate reflects the norms, goals, values, the interpersonal relationships, teaching, learning, and leadership practices and organizational structures within the environment or that school life. So the National School Climate Center defines school climate as the quality and character of school life and identifies 4 major aspects: safety, teaching and learning, relationships, and environment. So all of these aspects can create a positive school climate, which is really critically related to a school's success. So let's take a deeper look at each of these aspects. Safety. Learning occurs best in a warm, inviting, and orderly school setting where students are safe, where they feel free from theft, from threats, intimidation, bullying, weapons, drugs, or violence of any type. School leaders and staff members, along with community members and leaders, have a shared responsibility to ensure that schools are safe and orderly. Policymakers should focus their efforts on providing additional funding and support for mental health services, crisis identification programs, and on enhancing those school safety procedures. In addition, while most schools may have a comprehensive emergency plan and carry out drills for emergency situations, few have an effective comprehensive plan to address the complex, individualized needs of students with disabilities. Most schools are not fully prepared to support students with intellectual or developmental disabilities, including sensory disabilities, medical and mobility disabilities, behavioral disabilities, hearing impaired, and other unique challenges when there is an emergency situation. Addressing the needs of students with disabilities in school crisis preparedness not only fosters inclusive practices, but it is a conversation that should be had, and it's the right thing to do. For more information about school safety issues that affect students with disabilities and how to take action, you can find that information in our handouts. Next slide. Another aspect of school climate is the teaching and learning that occurs within that environment. Teachers must use supportive practices, and that can mean accommodating individual student needs. It's about using mistakes and incorrect answers as opportunities to learn and teach, not for correction and shaming. Using for providing feedback, offering praise for hard work, and maintaining high expectations for every student. Making sure teachers are properly trained to work with students with disabilities can help foster inclusive practices. Districts should understand that not just the special education teachers should be trained, but all teachers, including the paraprofessionals and school administrative staff as well. The effect of positive school climate not only contributes to improve academic outcomes among diverse groups of students, but its effects seem to persist for years to come. Next, relationships, another aspect of school climate. Students and teachers must feel that they belong. Fostering relationships with students by making an effort to interact with each student provides students with opportunities to excel, work with students to establish goals and overcome weaknesses. It provides opportunities to invite students to share their experiences and feel comfortable sharing their culture. It's also very important to reach out to parents by sharing their students' successes. Teachers usually believe that they have positive relationships with their students, but few rarely take the regular opportunities to truly reflect on those relationships and what that looks like, and to assess their students' perception of them and how that might be enhanced as well. Teacher-student relationships will improve in schools that expect and provide more opportunities for teachers to truly be intentional about their relationships with students and committed to growing them over time. One way to really begin this process is to ask teachers questions such as, what do you think it's like to be a student at this school? How do you think your students view you? Do they trust you? Do they feel respected by you? This kind of exercise can be particularly powerful when teachers have the opportunity to consider each of their students individually. This allows them to identify how their behavior may vary with different students and where they might focus their relationship building efforts. Next slide. Environment. The school must be inviting to students, parents, and teachers. Walk into any school or classroom and you will know immediately if they were successful in creating this environment. You might immediately feel welcomed, accepted, important to the group, or uncomfortable and hesitant almost as though you are intruding on someone else's space or activity. So part of a sense of belonging has to do with student participation also in school activities. So all students should be encouraged to participate in activities by providing proper supports and accommodations that creates an accessibility to these activities. Brenda?
Thank you, Monique. A positive school climate includes the norms, values, and expectations that support people feeling socially, emotionally, and physically safe. People are engaged and respected. Students, families, and educators work together to develop and contribute to a shared school vision. Educators model and nurture attitudes that emphasize the benefits and satisfaction gained from learning. Each person contributes to the operations of the school and the care of the physical environment. There is growing evidence that school climate influences various aspects of student academic, social, and emotional life. Recent studies have shown connections between positive school climate and a number of positive student outcomes, including student engagement, motivation to learn, academic achievement, increased self-esteem and student self-concept, as well as reductions in substance use, aggression, absenteeism, and suspension rates. Therefore, addressing school climate supports the conditions needed for student learning and positive development. Next slide. So let's review what we've discussed so far. We have learned that school climate is the quality and character of school life, that the four major aspects to a school climate are safety, teaching and learning, relationships, and environment, and that a positive school climate supports people feeling socially, emotionally, and physically safe. It is a place where everyone is engaged and respected. Next slide. The co-relationship between school climate and inclusion can support the development of communities with mutual respect, understanding, and equity for each other. By truly engaging all students as co-creators for inclusive communities, we can see the benefits that are both seen through equitable access and socially felt by feeling as a valued member of the community. Focusing on the value of diversity and ways to celebrate the talents of each person contributes and capitalizes on the fact that everyone has a place in the community to learn, grow, and share. It is important for a school to ensure that inclusion happens on all levels of interaction, between students, between teachers, and between administrators. Inclusion must be the expected practice in the very way that the school functions. And now I'll pass it along to Stephanie.
Thanks, Brenda. Let's talk more about inclusion. Inclusion is about all of us. Inclusion is a legal, moral, ethical, and civil right. Inclusion is about living full lives. It's about learning to live together. Inclusion makes the world our classroom. It considers that all students are full members of the school community and are entitled to the opportunities and responsibilities available to all students in the school. With proper preparation and support, everyone benefits from an inclusive approach to education. Inclusion is a value. Inclusion treasures diversity and builds stronger communities. Inclusion is about our abilities, our gifts, and how to share them. Inclusion is not just a disability issue, it is a way of living. Please visit the inclusion section of our website. The link is on that slide on spanadvocacy.org for additional resources and links on inclusion. At the bottom of the page, you will find a webinar titled Inclusion, What Parents Can Do. This webinar provides tips and strategies on creating meaningful inclusion for your child. You can also hear from self-advocates on their own experiences with inclusion. And the link to the webinar will be put into the chat box. Next slide. Here are just a few questions to ask as we promote a more inclusive climate. Do all students feel a strong sense of belonging? Do all parents believe that the school values their perspectives and contributions? Do parents and educators leave meetings together with a renewed sense of shared purpose on behalf of the student? Does the school purposefully nurture positive student relationships and shared activities? Are all faculty members appreciative of diversity in student readiness and learning, language, race, culture, experiences? Next slide. So now that you've learned what a positive school climate is, think back to your own school days. How was your school's climate? And it's time for a poll. Take a moment and think about your school's climate and select one. Was it positive? Could it have been improved? Maybe it was not so great. Please select the appropriate response and click submit.
Thanks, Stephanie. About 40% of you have answered the poll. I'm going to give it another few seconds, and then I'm going to close it and share the results. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share. So 25% of you say your experience was positive, thinking back to your school. 50% says that it could have been improved, and then 25% say not so great.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. So based on your responses to the poll, please share with us, what about your school's climate was positive or could have been improved or maybe wasn't so great? So take a moment and reflect and write in the chat box, maybe share your own personal experience of why you, in looking back, you thought that maybe the experience was positive or could have been better or wasn't so great. So again, just to engage you guys in some conversation, why did you think that your school's climate was positive, or maybe how could it have been improved, or why was it not so great?
I just wanted to also add that it might take an additional few seconds, but I wanted to share one of our participants on the webinar is in the room with two other parents who are Spanish speaking, and she's doing simultaneous translation and interpretation of this webinar. So we would like to thank you all for joining us and for including all parents to get the information, this important information about school climate and inclusion. So I do see I did see a comment from one of the participants who says that their school climate, looking back and reflecting on their own experiences as a child in school, it wasn't so good and could be improved due to the staff exhibiting unwelcoming behavior toward the students. And other comments and experiences shared sort of circle around the theme that there was a lot of favoritism going on between students and teachers, and it seemed as though it was more like a popularity contest, and it was rather divided in many different cliques, and you needed to belong in the clique to feel welcome and to be accepted.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for sharing your personal experiences with us today.
Yes, cliques are not exactly conducive to a positive school climate. So thank you, Tatiana, for that. And I also want to leave you with something else to think about. Take a moment, again, go back into the chat box and think about your classmates' experiences. Do you think that your classmates' experiences were similar to yours? And think about students with disabilities. What do you think the students with disabilities, what their experience was like in terms of positive school climate? And again, take a moment and maybe write your thoughts in the chat box.
So just continuing with the conversation earlier we had, our participants shared that, there are some of them were victims of bullying, and they witnessed bullying of their classmates, and unfortunately sometimes instructional staff or teachers were a part of bullying, were engaged in bullying behaviors towards students. So it was their experience, overall perception of the school climate from their childhood memories was impacted in negative way by being both a victim and an observer, bystander.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tatiana, and thank you to everyone for your honesty and your comments. Brenda?
Thank you, Stephanie. So inclusion is more than equitable access, but the mutual expectation that all students are encouraged and engaged in school activities to their fullest potential. Inclusion ensures students with disabilities are provided with the supports necessary for their growth and development, all while learning collaboratively with their peers. Ensuring a positive school climate involves everyone. And by everyone, we mean all members of the school community, whether if it's the school personnel and not just the teacher. This includes secretaries, custodians, administration staff, etc. Teachers, and we're not just talking about the general education teachers. This includes the special education teachers as well. Students, all students, regardless of their disability. And now, next slide. We're going to open it up to questions. Are there any questions that the audience might want to ask?
I see no questions, but we're having a very engaging discussion with participants on the previous question, and they felt, again, to add more to our earlier discussion, one of the participants shares that she knows that the classmates felt this way then, and we have talked about it even now being adults. They talk about it now, and how many of her classmates felt the same, unfortunately, and they all graduated high school in 1984. So those thought-provoking questions that we asked earlier really ring back on some of the things that they've experienced in their childhood and they're seeing right now. And this is something that why they joined us today on this webinar about positive school culture and climate, so they could ensure that these things don't happen, or their children are not subjected to this similar experiences, and have a successful tenure in their schools. And as parents, they do everything in their power to ensure that happens for their children and all children in school. Some very good comments we are receiving. Thank you everyone for your continued support of our work. And if you have any specific questions about the webinar, please type them in the question box.
Okay. So yes, and now that you have learned about school climate, we want to move forward. So what can we do? We truly hope that you have learned today, that what you have learned today has inspired you to take action. Without action, we can't expect change. Think of your next steps. Some next steps to consider include a thorough review of your school's website. What can you find there about school climate? Find out who's in charge of school climate matters in your school district. Maybe ask questions. Is there a school climate committee? How can I join? How are parents involved? You could also join a parent group or if there is none, start one and have them tackle the issue. Discuss how school climate affects all students, particularly those receiving special education services. Next slide. Another step to consider is visiting our inclusion resource collection. This collection of resources on inclusion was developed and reviewed by the SPAN Start Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities project in collaboration with the New Jersey Office of Special Education Programs, and has been specifically created for families to use in supporting their children in leading inclusive lives. It consists of 4 parts: the benefits of inclusion, inclusion in education, strategies and tips for families, and additional resources. So what can you find in this collection? You will find one-pagers, infographics, briefs, fact sheets, training materials, websites, webinars, Spanish resources, and more. You can find the resource collection on our Start EPSD page on the SPAN website, and a link will be provided in the chat box. As we wrap up the conversation, we would like you to remember to use the hashtag #InclusionMeansAll to spread awareness and promote inclusive practices. We will leave you with this message.
Inclusion means all.
Inclusion means all.
Inclusion means all.
Inclusion means all.
Luke, what does inclusion mean to you?
Inclusion means all.
Thank you.
On behalf of SPAN and START EPSD project, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.